Hey friends, welcome back to Fulbright Farmstead. It has been a month here this last month, and we've had our fair share of challenges. March has been full of surprises, a lot of struggles, and also some pretty great moments as well. Today, we're diving into everything that's been going on, what we didn't expect, how we're dealing with it, and the lessons that we've learned along the way. At the beginning of the month, before lambing wrapped up, I continued to work with all of the yearlings to get them used to jumping up on the milking stand and get prepared for their future as milkers. Now let me tell you, heavily bred is not the best time to do this, as their ligaments get all loosey-goosey, and it can make jumping up on the stand pretty unsafe. However, sometimes you just gotta go with it and do what you can. Not everything is ideal. So I just keep a close eye on them when they jump up, and when they get close to lambing, we stop practicing. Some of them have done really well, and others, well, let's just say they are a bit more stubborn. But with a lot of patience and a little bribery, thankfully they love treats, we're making progress. Keep an eye out for an upcoming post and video on how to train your ewe to the milk stand. Right at the beginning of the month, we decided to take advantage of a warm spell after a little period of 20 below miserable weather and get a bunch of sheep work done. First up on the list was shearing. Originally, we were thinking that we might just have to crutch the ewes, which is just shaving their behinds and around their udders, because it was so cold. Luckily, we had a break in the weather and we were able to get the shearing done. Along with shearing, Jace also trimmed feet on any of the girls that needed it. I vaccinated each of them with CDT, so we wouldn't have to vaccinate the newborn lambs. They'll just need a booster in about a month. And then we did a health check on each ewe. We body condition scored everyone, and we also took a fecal sample to check for parasites. Have you ever collected fecal samples before? It was actually really funny. So our vet actually suggested that our kids do it. And so we gave our kids these little bags, and they just followed the ewes around and then waited for them to poop and collected the sample. They thought it was kind of strange, but also hilarious. So it was actually pretty fun. We got the results back from the fecal samples, and most, but not all, of our ewes needed dewormed. So I'm deworming them after they lamb as they come out of the jugs. My plan for this year is to try really hard to be more intensive with rotational grazing, so we won't need to use dewormer. What do you guys do to combat parasites? I'd love to know. One more thing I wanted to mention with vaccinating: make sure you keep an eye out on your ewes. Sometimes they can feel a little punky afterwards. Normally I don't have a problem, but this year I did have a ewe that didn't feel very good for a little while afterwards. It's just like getting a flu shot. Sometimes it can make you feel icky. Anyway, I gave her some supportive therapy, vitamin A, D, E, and B complex, and after about 3 days, she was back to her normal self, had her appetite back, and was doing well. So, unfortunately, we started off our lambing season with one of our ewes aborting dead lambs. It was a really tough blow. It's not the way that anyone ever wants to start, but it is just one of those things that happens, unfortunately. So 9 days before our lambing window should have began, I noticed a ewe showing signs of labor. She was having very forceful contractions and nothing to show for it. She didn't even have a developed udder yet. So I watched her for a little while and she wasn't making any progress. So I decided to go in and check things. Now, from the outside, she did not seem loose and dilated at all. I checked her and she didn't feel dilated on the inside either. After I pulled my arm out, she did pass a little tiny water bag. So my first thought was ringworm, and that is a condition where a ewe does not dilate for one reason or another, and there is no way to dilate them. The only way to get the lamb out is through a C-section. Now, on the other hand, there's something called false ringworm, and you can manually dilate a ewe with false ringworm. So I got to work, I put my arm in and just started trying to gently manually stretch her out, and I did get her dilated. So the first lamb's feet started to come along, and I felt the mouth, and I determined that the lamb was already dead. So I helped her deliver that lamb. It was a beautiful black and white ewe lamb. Now, once you assist on one lamb in a delivery, it's just good practice to go back and check and see if there's any more lambs. So I found another lamb and I got to work pulling it. The front feet were coming along, but there was something else wrong. There was no head. I felt all over with my hands and I could not find this lamb's head. After some time, I finally found it, but despite my best efforts, I could not bring the head into the position that it needed to be delivered. My husband took over. He had to work on her for quite a while, but he was finally able to position the head and deliver the lamb, a white ram lamb. The lamb's head was completely flipped up and over onto its back, and it was also dead. So, it had no muscle tone. So trying to pull that head forward, it was a tough one. It was a rough day for me. I understand things happen, but why did this happen? I felt for my ewe. I felt as if I had failed her as her shepherd. I knew the best thing that I could do was to learn from this experience, so I sent some of the placenta and one of her lambs off to the lab. I wanted to make sure this was just one of those things that happen and not something infectious. I gave that ewe an antibiotic since the lambs were dead inside of her. I also gave her an injection of vitamin A, D, E, and B complex. She has recovered wonderfully, and I've been milking her and using her as a nurse ewe for lambs, and she's doing excellent. So my plan for her is actually I'm going to throw her back out with the ram in April and try to get her bred up for fall lambing so I can milk her this winter. I did get the results back on the lambs, and they had got an infection while in utero and a placental infection, and that is why they passed. When I asked my vet, she said it's just one of those things that happen. It's not a big deal. It just happens. So. All right, so let's talk more about lambing season. It has had its highs and lows, but this year has definitely brought some unexpected surprises, both good and bad. It started off slow and steady with the ewes. I get up to check through the night. I get up at midnight, and then I get up for the day at 4 o'clock and go check. A lot of people don't check through the night, or they say actually disturbing them in the night will cause them to lamb versus if you just leave them alone. But I have such a small flock that it just makes me feel better to go out and check on them. By the end of March, we are down to the final 4 ewes. I had 20 bred ewes, and as of this video, 16 of them have lambed, resulting in 32 lambs. In one day, we had 10 lambs, a single, a set of twins, a set of triplets, and a set of quadruplets, plus 2 calves, all born in one day. It was a big day for us. And other than the first ewe aborting, most of lambing has gone pretty smooth. The majority of the ewes have all lambed unassisted. There was just a couple that needed just a slight bit of assistance. There was a yearling who her first ram lamb, he was really large. The lambs have been pretty big this year. He was kind of shoulder locked, and I just kind of gently pulled on his leg, and I could kind of feel him pop. And then she had him no problem, and had her second one, no assistance, came right out. I have tubed a couple lambs. They didn't necessarily need it, but it was cold, and I wanted to be sure that they had the appropriate amount of colostrum in them. A friend of mine, they have a flock of 600 ewes, and they just, whether they need it or not, they go down and they tube every single one with colostrum. That way they know that those lambs have had a good start, and they're not having to mess with them later on, because they end up getting hypothermic because they didn't get enough colostrum. Now, just a couple days ago at the end of March, I did lose another lamb, and it's tough. It doesn't matter if it's just one of those things that happens or how often it happens. It's hard every time you lose one. So while I was out in the barn doing a check, I found a lamb flat out in a jug. I immediately scooped her up and I ran into the house. She had been fine at the last check. She was a couple day old lamb. She had been eating. Normally by the time they're that age, they're out of the woods. So I'm not sure what happened. But regardless, she was very, very cold. She was completely unresponsive, couldn't hold her head up. So I knew that tubing her was not an option. You can't tube them if they can't even hold their head up. I knew better than to put the lamb in water to warm her up, but I had left my blow dryer in the barn and I was the only one home with my toddler. So running back out to get it until my husband got home was not really an option for me. So I decided to put the lamb in a bag and then I submerged her in warm water. I didn't give her any form of energy before I did that. Obviously, I couldn't give her milk because she was just too weak for milk. And I did not have any dextrose on hand or glucose to give her an injection. That's another big mistake. So make sure you have the stuff you need on hand before you need it. She started to perk up. She was holding her own head up. And I had planned on, I wanted to get her out of that water before she got too warm. The problem that I ran into was my bag must have had a hole in it and it started filling with water and she got wet, which was fine while she was in the sink, but I was worried if I pulled her out that she would get chilled again really easy. And I didn't want to pull her out until my husband could bring in my blow dryer and I could keep that nice dry heat on her. Unfortunately, by the time he got home from taking our kids to school, she had already passed. I believe this was completely my fault for not giving her a source of energy before I started to warm her up. That's very, very important unless it's a brand new baby lamb that still has their brown fat reserves to rely on. I'm pretty sure that she died of hypoglycemic shock. It's an unfortunate lesson to learn, and I knew better, but I won't make that same mistake again. On a better note, all of the other lambs, including the quadruplets, are doing very well. I went ahead and made the management decision to pull some lambs off of my ewes. All of my yearlings have had twins, and so I pulled one lamb off of each of them, so they are all only raising one lamb. And then the triplet mama, I pulled one off, and the quadruplet mama, I pulled two babies off of. So I am raising the bums on cow's milk, and they are all doing very well. No one has gotten the runs or anything like that, so I am very happy about that. They are all eating well except for the oldest ram lamb, he is now almost 3 weeks old. He doesn't want anything to do with sucking milk from the bottle. He will take a very small amount and that's it. And I think he's mostly just eating hay. It was necessary to pull him off though. His mother was really starting to get pulled down thin. I have found that about 5 to 7 days old is the sweet spot for me for pulling lambs. A few of these lambs that I pulled off, I was supplementing with a bottle while they were still with their mama before I pulled them off. 5 to 7 days, it gives them a really good start, yet they're not so old. They haven't been with their mama for so long that then they don't do well when you pull them off. They don't refuse the bottle. They still take it really well. I had a surprise colorful lamb. So one of the fun, unexpected surprises this lambing season was a white and red lamb born from 2 black parents. I love surprises like that. Where her color came from, I I have no idea. She is the only one we've had like that so far. Luckily, it's a ewe lamb, born to a ewe with great hand milking teeth, so she'll definitely be a keeper. All right, so now on to another challenge, but at least this one ends well. If you want to hear a story about being in the right place at the right time, this is it. My husband, toddler, and I were out in the barn doing chores. Now, normally after chores, we head to the house to get the little guy ready for bed. This evening, however, we had a yearling in labor and we decided to just stay out in the barn and watch and let the little guy play. Normally, we just let the ewes have their space while in labor and then come back to check on their progress a little while later. Thank goodness we stayed in the barn this time. While we were watching the yearling lamb, we started to notice some commotion in the mixing pen. One of our mamas was bloating, and if we didn't do something quick, we were going to lose her. Her tummy was tight as could be, and she was staggering around and falling down. I ran to the house as fast as I could. I grabbed a tube and mineral oil. We quickly tubed her with mineral oil, followed by a baking soda drench. We kept her moving and massaged her rumen. Slowly, it felt like ages, the bloat went down and she returned to normal. Had we left the barn, we would have come back to find her dead, leaving 2 lambs behind. Moral of the story, bloat happens, make sure you are prepared to act. Have a tube on hand or at least something to drench with and some sort of an oil. Soapy water will work in a pinch. I keep a gallon jug of mineral oil on hand and I'm so grateful we were able to save her life. When I have a ewe that has extra milk or a ewe that only has a single, which hasn't been the case so far this year, I like to save some colostrum. It is a simple but very important thing to have on hand for lambing season. Did you know that for the best immunity through colostrums, lambs should consume a whopping 6 ounces of colostrum in the first 30 minutes of life? I'm sure it varies depending on the size of the lamb, but the point is, it is a lot more than you would think. Normally, I just save my colostrum in one big container, but this year I used my silicone butter mold and froze my colostrum in that and in ice cube trays. We'll see how I like that idea next year. We're also in the midst of calving season. Yes, I decided to do them both at the same time. We AI our cows every year, which I love because it gives them a tight calving window and we don't have to take care of a bull year round. This year, due dates put us at the last couple days in March, but our first heifer went a week early, followed by my milk cow a couple days later, and then another cow and heifer a couple days after that, and then finally my dairy heifer finished us out just another couple days after that. The Jersey calves have the typical Jersey underbite, and they might just be the cutest things ever. I have been milking the ewe that lost her lambs and my old milk cow, JG. Despite having 2 gallons in milk, I'm only getting about half a gallon a day, or I was. JG has a lot of edema and the milk really hasn't started flowing yet, and it's been so frustrating milking her twice a day and only getting 3 cups maybe each time. It seems like it's starting to get a little better, but it's definitely still really slow. Now I am up to milking 3 cows a day plus the ewe. It has been chaos, but I think I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel now. With 2 of those cows in training, it was taking me 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening to get my chores done. So the one cow, she's all right. She'll kind of kick a little bit, but it's no big deal. I can still get her milked out and we move on with life. The heifer, however, is catty, agile, and cranky. She really throws a fit and kicks like the dickens. At first, it was a huge production just to get her in the barn and get her sorted so that I could even get near her. She's probably one of the toughest ones that I have ever had to deal with in 11 years, 12 years of having a milk cow. So we're a few days in now and she's finally settling down. I'm still having to tie a leg back, but at least things are starting to go a little more smooth, and she's beginning to accept the fact that it's not so bad to be milked out. Either that, or it's because I had a chat with her and told her that if she didn't want to be a milk cow, she would become steaks. So there's that. So for now, things are just so chaotic that I'm hardly worrying about saving much milk for us. Mostly, I'm just keeping the cows comfortable and using their milk to feed my bum lambs. I just don't have the brain capacity or the time right now for making in cheese or adding extra ewes to milk. Once we get back into a good rhythm and everyone settles into their routine, I'll start pulling lambs on my best milkers and separating them overnight so I can save milk from those ewes and get back to cheese making. Until then, we're just surviving. Can you relate? In other news, the frozen sheep milk Colby I made a couple months back, you can watch about that here. It was finally ready to eat. I decided to cut it in half and try smoking half of it. I smoked it right on my propane barbecue. It turned out great. To learn more about using a barbecue to smoke cheese, I will link a post I wrote about it down below. While the smoking went well, the cheese itself didn't turn out quite like I had hoped. Sometimes things don't turn out perfect, but that's how we learn and grow, right? I'll fix my mistakes and make it better next time, and I hope you will too. We had wonderful guests staying in the bunkhouse this month, one being an amazing fiber artist who gave us a beautiful gift, yarn spun from her own flock of sheep. It's such a thoughtful gesture, and we're excited to see what projects come out of it. If you have any ideas on what I should make with it, please comment below and tell me. Also had our first repeat guest. She was our very first guest to stay in the bunkhouse, and her daughter came back. So that was really cool and really special for us. Spring has sprung. As spring seems to maybe be making its way to Montana, I decided I better get started on the garden. I spent one afternoon sifting compost to make seed starting soil and then planted 200 or so onion seeds. They have since germinated and are now growing under the lights in my basement. Here's the thing. So they started to germinate, and then I went down and went to water them, and I noticed some sunflower seeds on top of them. I thought, that's strange. And it also seemed like some of my little sprouts were missing. And I thought, well, maybe they just kind of dried out and withered and died. I didn't think too much of it. Well, then the next day I went to water them, and there was a big scoop out of the center. So I asked my husband if my toddler had been unattended downstairs. And he said, no. Well, come to find out, a mouse had found my little onion seedlings and had been helping himself. So because of that, I'm not sure how many onion seedlings I'm going to have. So I thought I would try something new this year and attempt direct sowing onions. Have you ever tried it? I never have, but Teresa Podol at Prairie Road Organic Seeds says she has been having success with that method. So I thought it's worth a shot. I'm in zone 4. If it doesn't work, I'm only out a couple bucks and some time. Warm season crops, tomatoes and peppers, tomatillos, those kind of things. I'm getting started now. So here's hoping we have an excellent garden in 2025. So that is our March Farmstead update. It's been a month full of surprises, some difficult moments, feels like a lot of difficult moments, and a lot of growth, hopefully. We're learning every day, and we wouldn't trade this life for anything. Want to try this lifestyle out for size? Come visit us in our sheep wagon or in our cabin. We'd love to have you. Thanks for following along with us. We can't wait to share more updates as we move into the spring season. If you've experienced any of these challenges on your farm, or if you have tips or advice, please drop a comment below. We love hearing from you. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates from the farmstead. Until next time, take care and enjoy the beauty of new life on the farm in springtime.